Welcome to the unsettling narrative of John List, a man whose crimes and disappearance would captivate the nation for nearly 2 decades. John List, a seemingly mild-mannered and devoutly religious man, lived in Westfield, New Jersey, with his family. He was an accountant who had experienced financial difficulties and mounting debt, which contributed to the grim events that unfolded on the fateful day of November 9, 1971. John List's financial problems had caused him immense stress, and he had become increasingly paranoid. He believed that his family's financial and moral difficulties were a reflection of his failure to provide for them. In his distorted perspective, he believed that he was saving his family from financial ruin and moral degradation by killing them. On that fateful November day, John List executed his chilling plan. He methodically killed his entire family one by one. Helen List. He began by shooting his wife, Helen, while she was sipping her morning coffee in the kitchen. She had no idea of the horror that was about to unfold.
Alma List. John then went to the third-floor attic and strangled his elderly mother, Alma, who had been living with the family.
Patricia List. His 16-year-old daughter, Patricia, arrived home from school next. List shot her in the back of the head as she entered the house.
Frederick List. John then went to the recreation room in the basement where he shot his 13-year-old Frederick.
John List Jr. Lastly, he went to his son's bedroom and shot his 15-year-old son, John List Jr., who was the final victim.
After committing the murders, List meticulously cleaned up the crime scenes, and he continued to maintain a facade of normalcy to the outside world. After the killings, John List vanished. He had arranged for the termination of his mail and various utilities, leaving the house in a state of eerie suspended animation. For 18 years, authorities had no leads on his whereabouts. It wasn't until 1989 that John List was finally apprehended. The case was solved after the television show America's Most Wanted aired a segment about him. A viewer recognized his photo and reported him to the authorities. He had been living under a different identity in Virginia. John Emil List was born on September 17, 1925, in Bay City, Michigan. His early life was relatively unremarkable. He served in the U.S. Army during World War II and later attended the University of Michigan, where he studied business administration. After graduating, List held various accounting positions and seemed to be leading a fairly ordinary life. In 1951, List married Helen Morris Taylor, and the couple had 3 children, Patricia, Frederick, and John Jr. John worked as an accountant and financial officer to support his family, and they appeared to be a typical suburban household. Despite outward appearances, John List's life was plagued by financial difficulties. His career was marked by several job changes and periods of unemployment. His mental state began to deteriorate as he became increasingly paranoid and religiously fanatical. He believed that his family was morally corrupt and that they were contributing to his financial failures. On November 9, 1971, List's pent-up frustrations and delusions led him to commit one of the most heinous crimes in American history. In a premeditated act, he murdered his entire family. He shot his wife, mother, and 3 children in a meticulously planned and brutal spree of violence inside their Westfield, New Jersey home. After the murders, List left a note at the crime scene explaining his actions, attributing the deaths to financial difficulties and the moral corruption he perceived in his family. He then disappeared, leaving behind a carefully staged scene with music playing and lights left on to give the impression of normalcy. He also terminated his family's mail and utilities to delay the discovery of the crime. For 18 years, List managed to elude law enforcement and live under a false identity in Virginia. In 1989, List's true identity was discovered thanks to an episode of the television show America's Most Wanted. He was arrested and extradited to New Jersey. In 1990, he went on trial for the murder of his family. List was found guilty and received 5 consecutive life sentences in prison rather than the death penalty due to the abolition of the death penalty in New Jersey. John List spent the remainder of his life in prison, maintaining a relatively unremarkable existence behind bars. He never showed remorse for his actions, and he died of pneumonia on March 21, 2008, at the age of 82, while still incarcerated. The case of John List stands as a chilling example of family annihilation and the psychological unraveling of an outwardly ordinary man. His crimes continue to be studied and discussed in the context of family violence and the complex interplay of factors that can lead to such heinous acts. After committing the murders, John List managed to evade capture for 18 years, the longest time of any fugitive on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list at the time. While on the run, List assumed the identity of Robert Clark, a name he had taken from a former college classmate. Under this new identity, he built a new life and even got remarried. It was this remarriage and an episode of America's Most Wanted that led to his capture. One of the factors that contributed to List's descent into madness was his religious fanaticism. He believed that his family's perceived moral failings were a major factor in his financial struggles, and he saw their murders as a way to save their souls. The murders List committed were highly premeditated and carefully planned. He went to great lengths to create an illusion of normalcy after the killings, leaving lights and a radio on in the house and even leaving a note to the children's schools explaining that the family was going on vacation. As we conclude this journey through the life and crimes of John List, we bid farewell to the haunting legacy of a family annihilator whose actions continue to intrigue and horrify even long after his death.